Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recordings that you've never heard of. Yeah, and this one is really great and really unusual. And it's wonderful when we find fabulous new recordings of music by composers who we really like, familiar composers, but we may not have heard for whatever reason. And here's one of them. It's Richard Strauss, the suite from the Bourgeois Gentilhomme, which many people have heard. But even more fascinating, the symphonic suite, 39 minutes of symphonic suite from his opera Ariadne auf Naxos. This was arranged in 2010 by D. Wilson Ochoa for orchestra, and it's performed magnificently by the Buffalo Philharmonic under JoAnn Falletta. Now, listen, folks. JoAnn Falletta and the Buffalo Philharmonic have done as marvelous they're on a roll. I mean, as marvelous a collection of interesting and unusual repertoire as has ever been done. I mean, the Buffalo Philharmonic is a good orchestra. Falletta is a really compelling conductor, and the repertoire choices have been inspired. And one of the things I always say about doing rare repertoire or off the beaten path stuff is that even more than like your next version of a Beethoven symphony, this stuff needs great recordings and great performances, because people don't know it. And it has to make the best possible impression if it's ever going to stand a chance of becoming a little bit more mainstream, or at least, exciting some enthusiasm. It's one thing to have, your schlumperai orchestra do it and get through it and play the notes and, with a so-so conductor and all that. But it's a whole nother world when someone who really knows how to dig into it and present it with enthusiasm and affection and insight does the job. And Falletta and the Buffalo Philharmonic have been doing the job for years. I reviewed this when it came out on ClassicsToday.com. If you're an insider subscriber, please have a look at that review. There's a sound clip with it, so you can hear a bit of it. And it's really quite splendid. Now, the Bourgeois Gentilhomme and Ariadne auf Naxos originally were written to be performed together. They were a double bill. Strauss wrote incidental music to a version of the play, and then he had this opera thing, Ariadne auf Naxos. It was a very long evening. It was a project with Hugo von Hofmannsthal, who, was in love with every word he wrote, as most, playwrights are. And so it was a bit of a failure. It wasn't going to get performed, in the way it was originally composed for very long. So Strauss elaborated Ariadne auf Naxos, making it a completely separate, fabulous opera, and made a suite from the incidental music to the Bourgeois Gentilhomme. That suite has been performed many times by Fritz Reiner, no less, who left out a couple numbers, but still, and many other people. And it's delightful. They're written for the same sort of chamber orchestra of, a few dozen players. And it really just Strauss at his neoclassical confectionery best, really is. And this is as fine a performance as any you'll ever hear. It's light, it's dazzling, it's fun, it's got that sense of buoyancy, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek quality to some of the numbers. It's really fun to listen to. And then we have the suite from Ariadne auf Naxos, which contains, as do all Strauss operas, magnificent stretches of orchestral music, or orchestral music underpinning some of the vocal numbers. I mean, Es gibt ein Reich is in here, for example, the big aria, one of the big arias anyway. And it's really well done. Everything hangs together. There's plenty of contrast, and you won't even recognize some of the music, because usually if it's being sung on top of the orchestra, you don't pay attention to the care that Strauss lavishes on sometimes even very, very simple and basic accompanimental passages. But so here, there was plenty of music to choose from. That's the point, really. Lots of music worth hearing. And hear it we do, in an absolutely splendiferous performance. And it's so easy to overlook a disc like that, with so many things coming out, so much to choose from. But Strauss is one of those composers who we really like. And if you like his tone poems particularly, you wish he hadn't stopped writing them in order to write opera, which may drive you crazy. And if you like opera, then you're going to probably enjoy hearing some of this stuff without having to get into the question of whether or not the singers are the ones that you prefer or don't prefer. It's just a wonderful idea to make suites out of these things. Strauss, interestingly, really wasn't interested in making suites from his operas for the most part. And the ones he did make are usually terrible. Remember, the Rosenkavalier suites are not by Strauss. I mean, they were by Arthur Rodzinski, I think, did the big one, the main one. The waltz sequences Strauss had a hand in, but it is still, Strauss arranged the whole Rosenkavalier as a silent movie score. That's another story. And there's a video about that, if you're curious. But I mean, his suite from his grandest of all operas, Die Frau in Schatten, is one of the worst things he wrote, and he knew it, and he didn't care. He wanted his operas to be played as operas. And so the most sensitive work for, in arranging his music for concert performance, his operatic music, is going to be done by other people. And this is one of the really, really fine efforts. And it's delightful to hear it in such a marvelous performance on Naxos with the Buffalo Philharmonic, JoAnn Falletta, and yeah, this is hot stuff. And I doubt you heard it when it came out. So give it a shot now. You won't be sorry. You really won't be. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.